Thank you for joining us here today. I'm Christina Swallow, and I'm the Director of the Nevada Department of Transportation. With me here today are Councilwoman Diaz and Councilman Creer, as well as Captain Spencer from Las Vegas Metro Police Department. We are here to talk today about our long-term effort to address the aging infrastructure, safety, and operations along the I-515 through downtown, also known as our Downtown Access Project. This project will not be under construction for at least 5 to 7 years and should not be confused with the interim repair project that will start construction in April. So this is the long-term fix to the viaduct. The Downtown Access Project is currently in the environmental phase, and we are trying to determine the best alternative of 3 to meet the needs of the community, of NDOT, and of the City of Las Vegas. Alternatives include removing the viaduct and recessing the freeway below grade, or rebuilding the freeway at a similar height as today, but on fill for large portions of the continuous viaduct structure, essentially removing the empty spaces under the bridge on either side of the 3 streets, as you see here where we're parked. In all 3 alternatives, we have 8 surface streets that currently travel under I-515 that may be closed permanently. These include 7th, 8th, 10th, 14th, 15th, 16th, 19th, and 21st. 2 of these are proposed to be closed to vehicles but will remain as pedestrian crossings. Those are 15th and 21st. In the recessed alternative only, 4th Street is also proposed for closure just south of 515. In this scenario, traffic would be routed onto Casino Center or Las Vegas Boulevard to access the freeway. So you might be asking, why is NDOT proposing to close these streets? Well, from an engineering perspective, most of these streets are not lengthy, and they terminate just north or south of the 515. Also, closing them does not negatively impact the rest of the system or create lengthy detours. However, we know that they will create detours and it will impact the community, so we are actively seeking feedback from anyone who might be impacted by these closures. We, NDOT and the City of Las Vegas, have spent a lot of time talking about how to reach the community that might be impacted by these closures, because we don't want to move forward until we've heard from those who use these roads and live in the area. We recently sent postcards. I think you haven't seen them. We recently sent postcards to more than 9,000 residents and businesses in the area. Team members have also been talking to those businesses and first responders. And starting today, we are implementing test closures to solicit feedback. So, starting today, we are partially closing the 8 streets proposed for closure and all 3 alternatives. As you can see here on 7th Street with the cones and signage in place already. These partial closures will be in place for 3 weeks and include barricades across a portion of the street with signage to encourage the public to provide feedback about the project via a survey on our website or by calling our community feedback line. After the 3-week partial closures, we'll move into full closures for 2 weeks, from March 29th to April 12th. During that time frame, March 29th to April 12th, vehicles will have to use alternate routes. The goal is for them to experience the closures and provide feedback of that impact. During the partial and full closures, the sidewalk will remain open for pedestrians, but we still encourage pedestrians and bicyclists, those that may be able to still traverse the roads, to reach out to us via our website or a community feedback line, because the full closures will impact them as well, and in fact possibly impact them more with the detours. We recognize that this may be inconvenient, so it's so important to get the feedback now when it's still temporary. We want to know how the community feels about these closures and how they will impact the members that are impacted and their families. Once on the website, feedback will be submitted via a survey tool that allows the user to comment on as many of the streets as they'd like. For instance, if sometimes they use 14th but sometimes they use 15th, they can comment on both. If participants call the community feedback line, a project representative will ask them the same questions and record their answers, and all communications are available in Spanish and English. I'd now like to invite Councilwoman Diaz and after her Councilman Creer to the podium to share their thoughts on this community feedback effort.
Thank you, Christina, and happy International Women's Day. You're a female engineer showing us that females can be trailblazers in all walks of life. And I want to also congratulate every single one of you that has a mom and a sister or a significant other that's celebrating today. It's about making each other better. I appreciate NDOT working with the city on this project to get everyone's input. Infrastructure projects are important and they're so necessary to make sure that we're keeping traffic flowing safely and efficiently. But we do understand that it doesn't make it any less frustrating when you have somewhere to go and there are road closures. This is why we are doing these test closures. Again, they're test closures to gain feedback from all of you that may be impacted by this test closure. That's why it's so important that we get your feedback, that you communicate with NDOT what is impacting or impeding your daily route. So make sure that you share the community's vision. What does this project entail in the future? Are these test road closures a smart thing or a not so smart thing? It's also very important that we be included, that all voices are included in this process and that we don't leave anybody out. And so I want to highly encourage Hispanics, Latinos to engage because everything has been prepared in Spanish and there are assistants waiting to get your call that can take your feedback in Espanol. I grew up in this community just a few blocks east, and so this is very near and dear to my heart to make sure that we're learning about and that we're hearing about why it's important to replace this infrastructure, but also how we can make it better and more beautiful for you. Once the team takes all of your input and all of it is evaluated, then we're going to take what you tell us and make the changes, either for or against something. So it is time to provide your feedback. I'm going to go ahead and say a little bit of this en español. Quiero dar las gracias al Departamento de Tránsito del Estado por hacer esta instalación de cerrar estas calles de forma temporal. La razón por la cual estamos cerrando las calles es para que ustedes nos comuniquen cómo les impacta el cierre de ciertas calles en este proyecto. Ahora, estos cierres van a ser 3 semanas, van a cerrar las 3 semanas y esperamos que usted se contacte con el Departamento de Transporte y les deje saber qué es lo que les molesta a usted de estos cierres temporales para que no se hagan permanentes. Así es que por favor, tienen operadoras en español, toda la información está en español y con mucho gusto se le atenderá. And because the gods of the wind are telling me that I need to hand over the mic to my colleague, I'm going to go ahead and introduce someone who not only works beside me because our wards are adjacent each other, but we really do believe in community and we want to see what's best for our community day in and day out. I introduce to you Councilman Cedric Creer.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's great to be here. Happy International Women's Day. As a father of 2 daughters, a husband for 27 years, I really believe that a woman's right to excel and to be the best that the world has to offer is deep-rooted in my heart. Thank you, Councilwoman Diaz. Thank you, Director, for having us here today. But I'm excited that the city and NDOT are working together to make infrastructure improvements to the core of our community. I know it can be frustrating to see orange cones on the road with no work occurring. But these test closures will help the team better understand how the community feels about these proposed street closures. And hopefully the data that is gathered will limit future closures and make the entire project much more efficient. All road and infrastructure projects are inconvenient, but we hope to limit that inconvenience while ensuring that the community's roadways are maintained and that they are safe. If you live in the area or use these streets, now is the time to speak up and let NDOT know how you want these projects to be planned. The portion of US I-515 and 95 corridor is a key entryway into Ward 3 and the historic west side of Ward 5. And we want to make sure the community is heard. This is your time. Don't wait until it's done to say, I didn't know about it, to sit back and not give input. The time is now, and we want your input, and we value your input. So let us know how you feel about these proposed closures, how they will impact you and your family. And I encourage you to visit the website or call the community feedback line to share your thoughts. And don't forget that the survey will be available through April the 12th. Thank you, and have a fantastic day.
Thank you so much to Councilwoman Diaz and Councilman Creer for joining us here today. We are really working and wanting to make sure that we get this critical feedback. We want to know how these closures will impact you and your family. So please visit www.ndotdap.com to take a brief survey or call our community feedback line at 702-938-5440 to speak with a project representative in English or Spanish. Once this outreach effort concludes, NDOT and the City of Las Vegas will share the results of this feedback and work together to address the community's responses. Again, thank you so much for coming out with us today and in advance for sharing your feedback. Thank you. Yeah. So the viaduct is the first portion of the viaduct. It's actually 2 bridges, and it is reaching or has extended beyond its useful service life. Now that doesn't mean that it's dangerous by any means. It is safe, and you can continue to drive it. One of the things we are doing, as you heard me mention earlier, is we have an interim project that's going to start in April, and that's going to address any concerns that we have to extend the useful life of the viaduct. That said, if you drive the viaduct, you know that it is a choke point in our valley. It slows down, we have congestion issues, we have crashes, and so we want to make sure that this corridor can continue to serve our growing and vibrant community. And so we have to look at how do we replace it to make sure that we can move the vehicles and the freight, the people and the freight through it, but also do it in a safe way. Yeah, so like I said, we're still in our environmental process. So we're working through the NDEP process and the environmental process, and we are looking at adding capacity to it. We're also looking at continuing to provide some additional HOV access, for instance, specifically at Maryland Parkway. So we'll be providing additional access to the community. There is also currently in consideration an additional access at City Parkway. So in addition to the improvements that we'll do to the corridor itself, we're also providing additional access to the local community via those new interchanges.
Why can't you replace the viaduct with the viaduct? Why are you having to build up mounds and build roads in a different way like this?
You know, we could replace the viaduct with the viaduct. However, it's a very expensive proposition to do that, and then you have a lot of empty, vacant space that becomes a maintenance concern for the city and for NDOT. And so we're looking at how can we most economically achieve the aims of the transportation project, but also serve our community and really provide a better option for the community.
You said you may lower this interstate, right? Lower it down. I mean, that's a huge project, especially downtown, isn't it?
You know, no matter what we do, the viaduct, addressing the viaduct concerns is going to be a significant project. Either replacing it or putting it in a recessed option, either one is going to be a significant project. Yes?
Well, I think there's a neat bit of trivia. Isn't this the longest bridge
is. Yes, it is. This is currently the longest bridge in the state of Nevada. The second longest just opened last fall in the Centennial Bowl. So if and when we replace the viaduct, unless we do it as a viaduct, the longest bridge in the state will be at the Centennial Bowl. I think I heard you. The wind and the speakers is interfering, but you're right. It is called the Downtown Access Project, and we are concerned about how the viaduct limits access today and how we may, in developing the project, how we may work to improve that or further limit it. So we're working to try. That's why we want this community feedback, is to really understand how we can make the project better work for those that are on the ground in the vicinity of the project, not just those that are traveling through.
How old is this viaduct?
I don't have the exact age off the top of my head. 60. The first bridge is. The second bridge is not that old. So there's two.
So are there any alternate routes that would be helpful information to get out today, being the prospects of already under construction?
The detour routes. So if you go to the website, that'll show you. But also, so if we close 7th and 8th, 9th is going to stay open. 10th will be partially closed. But if you wanted a detour from 10th, you can either take 9th or Maryland Parkway. 14th will be temporarily closed, but Maryland is the detour. 16th, Bruce is the detour. So there are detours throughout. We're trying to minimize, if we do close permanently any of these corridors, that the detour would be minimal. And we're being very cognizant of the impact on the pedestrians and cyclists. All of these corridors have a good number of pedestrians and cyclists that use them, and any detour can be detrimental when you're powering yourself. So we're wanting to make sure we hear the feedback from those. That's why even though the sidewalks will remain open, we're still hoping those community members will reach out and let us know how it could impact them.
And the PR wants to be sure that we push the website information, so we have you saying.
Yeah, so just please make sure you go to the website, and again, that's www.ndotdap.com, and the phone number is 702-938-5440.
How would this project play into the expansion of the I-11? I know you guys are looking at moving it bigger. Would this project play in the proposal or potentially moving around the city? How does this factor into that?
It may factor into it. So we're also concurrent to this project and the NEPA process that we're working on with this project. We're also doing the next phase of NEPA for I-11 to figure out how I-11 will traverse our city, our valley. And we are looking, there are 3 corridors. We actually just had a virtual public meeting on this last fall on I-11. And as that continues, we're hoping to have that identified close to the same time, that corridor identified close to the same time we finish the NEPA on the Downtown Access Project, so that if it does become the preferred, if 95 becomes the preferred corridor, we can plan and design for that.
Yeah, because there would be more traffic, right?
Potentially. All right, thank you again, everyone. I really appreciate you spending the time and helping us get the word out so that we can hear from the community. We definitely want to make sure their voices are included.